So I have yet to film with this camera. I have yet to film with this microphone, and I have yet to film anything in my car ever. So this is going to be an adventure for all of us. But I wanted to kind of give explaining my decision-making a shot here. And what I mean by that is I have had the privilege now of owning this M3 Competition for just over a year. And I really have not filmed it. I have not talked about it. I have not done much of anything with it at all except drive it. And I think it's a car that is worth talking about. And it's a car that's worth featuring and you know, it's also a car that to a lot of people is something they want to be in one day or something similar, and figured it might be worth kind of documenting some of my experience and some of what I have learned, both positives and negatives about the car. You will also have to forgive the scenery. It's the dead of winter, and even though it's about 50 degrees today, it has been in the 20s most days for the past several weeks. And so definitely at a point right now where the car needs cleaning. So that's why I'm out, and that is what we're doing today. So just filled up with gas, and wanted to take the opportunity to just document a little bit and test the camera, test the car, test the microphone, and learn, share what I've learned, all of the above. So a little bit of background with my kind of entrance to the car space. The first car that I ever drove consistently was a 2004 Toyota Camry. And it had about 140,000 miles on it when I started driving it, and it had about 190,000 miles on it when I finished driving it. That's, you know, back when I got my permit, my license, all of the above. Also drove my my family's Nissan NV 3500, which for those of you that don't know is a giant 12-passenger van. And my dad always joked that he was going to make me take my driving test in that. Thankfully, he did not. The first car that I ever purchased was a 2008 V6 Mustang, and looking back on it, obviously, was probably the beginning of the end for me when it came to ever buying a non-fun car ever again. I've made the joke for a very long time that cars are kind of the one thing that I spend money on. Now that's obviously not true because I'm getting into production again. But that car I bought for $4,000 in 2017, and then I drove that car for probably 35,000 miles and sold it for $4,000 all over again. And that car in particular is a lot of fun. Didn't handle very well. You know, it's the old S197 Mustang V6. The transmission was nothing special, 6-speed, but it got very good gas mileage for what it was. I remember there were trips that I would look down and see 35 miles to the gallon over, you know, driving back and forth to college and things like that. But that car really kind of drove me to love cars and appreciate cars and what, you know, what there is to be experienced in the automotive space. And I never really looked back. I had that car for 4 or so years. A lot of trips, a lot of driving to and from college, a lot of adventures. It's the first car I ever drove my wife around in. I loved that car, but I got my first adult job right out of, actually still during college. I had not yet graduated, and I was making $40,000 a year, and that was more money than I knew what to do with. And so I decided, hey, you know what would be brilliant? Let's buy a 2018 GT. And so I went from a 2008 V6 to a 2018 base model GT. I didn't get the performance pack. I didn't get any of the drivetrain upgrades. I did go with a slightly upgraded interior just for the Apple CarPlay and all of that. But I bought that car. My wife and I got married, had our honeymoon in that car. I owned that car for about 10 months, and in a shocking turn of events to absolutely nobody, I couldn't afford it. And so I ended up selling it, although that was at the height of the pandemic, and I made a considerable amount of money off of that car, that I then took and made a very interesting decision to lease a Honda Accord. Nothing against Honda. It was an exceptional car for what it was. 2022 Honda Accord Touring, which was, I believe at that point in time, the top trim. So a lot of luxury features. But by God, if it wasn't the most boring drive I've ever had. And again, I drove a Nissan NV 3500, and it was more exciting to drive than the Honda Accord. It had absolutely no power. It had absolutely no handling. It was just a nice everyday sedan, and it got 42 miles to the gallon. And for a time, that was a great decision, both financially and otherwise. But very, very shortly after owning that car, about 9 months of leasing it, in fact, I had decided that I had had enough, and thankfully was now making enough that I could feasibly afford another more enjoyable car. So in a recurring theme of learning from my mistakes, I purchased a 2018 Ford Mustang GT. This time though, it was kind of a top trim spec. So 2018 GT, the performance pack 2, all of the handling upgrades that came with. Otherwise, though, completely stock. Nothing super exciting or different or special about the car, other than the fact that it was, once again, 400 plus horsepower and a Mustang GT. Loved that car. Had a great time with that car. I bought it at about 30,000 miles and then traded it in at about 55 or 60,000 miles. So a kind of a recurring theme of putting a lot of miles on a lot of cars. But for a couple of reasons, decided that I was going to switch from performance coupes to performance sedans. Part of that was, trying to get out of the Mustang right before the new generation came out, the S650. The S550, the Coyote engine is probably one of the best engines ever made, or at least mass produced. But the car itself, not super practical. Can't put anybody in the back seat. Very little trunk space, and pretty quickly decided that that's just not the car that I wanted. I mean, maybe someday we come back around to coupes, but maybe that's a midlife crisis, and we'll see what happens. But I did a lot of research in the performance sedan space, and there aren't a whole lot of American performance sedans. You've got the Cadillac CT5 V Blackwing. You've got the Dodge Charger. That kind of rounds out the list, unfortunately. There's really not a whole lot available in terms of American makes and models in the performance sedan space. 4 doors, 4 to 5 seats, 400 plus horsepower. It's a very narrow market. The Kia Stinger, obviously not an American car, but a newer entrant to the space. I very quickly went to European, and specifically German. I was looking at Mercedes, I was looking at BMW, and I was looking at Audi. All 3 of the German luxury car makers carry some form of, if not many different models of luxury sedan. And I was doing a lot of comparison research, a lot of looking at what they all have to offer. Landed on BMW relatively quickly. From what I could tell and the research that I gleaned, BMW just kind of fit what I was looking for in terms of customization, in terms of performance, and that kind of sweet spot of price to performance. I didn't think I could go wrong with BMW, and narrowed it down to the 3 Series. Went and test drove both an M3 40i and an M3. And shout out to Malik at BMW of Charlottesville for his patience with me as I evaluated those vehicles. The M340i, you know, I put it in sport mode for the test drive, and I was like, if I'm going to buy the baby M version or the non-M performance version of this vehicle, I am going to push it to its limits during a test drive. And if I'm going to purchase the actual M series version of the car, I'm not. I'm going to put it in its most luxury, softest driving mode and make sure that it's going to be a comfortable daily driver. And boy, did it not disappoint. The M340i, don't get me wrong, it's an excellent piece of engineering from BMW. It's an inline six, it's a single turbo, just over 300 horsepower. But I just didn't feel anything special about the car. There was nothing about the vehicle that spoke to me. It didn't seem like it was a better experience than a Mustang GT for any of the justifications that I was measuring off of, any of the judgment criteria. Didn't handle better. It certainly did not perform better. It did not have the speed. It did not have the horsepower. It did not have the torque. It just didn't feel exciting. And that was in its sportiest configuration, and I just was not very intrigued by that car. So I pretty quickly landed on the M3 and was fortunate enough that BMW Charlottesville had an allocation. Got on the wait list for that allocation, and I spec'd this car in October of 2023. And it was officially landed early in December of 2023. And that's when I traded in the Mustang once again to the same dealership, and I have not looked back. So I have been in this M3 for the last 13,000 miles, and well over the last 12 months, pushing 14 or 15 months at this point, and it's an absolutely incredible car. There is nothing about this car that I would change. I'm sure at some point I will do either cosmetic modification, or maybe I'll get creative with the drivetrain and do something else, but this vehicle is absolutely incredible to drive. The steering dynamics, and again, I'm comparing this to a Mustang. Ford is not known for its precision driving dynamics, or its handling, or its steering. The stereotype in the Mustang community is obviously that it is rare to not see one sideways in a crowd. Unfortunately, the BMW stereotype is that they don't come equipped with turn signals, so I am very self-conscious to make sure that anytime I'm changing lanes or moving anywhere unpredictably, that I'm signaling as much as possible. The car itself is a twin-turbo inline six, pushing just over 500 horsepower. Depending on the year of the M3, you're looking at either 503 or 510 from factory, completely stock. I don't know the torque number off the top of my head, but it is more than enough, and it absolutely sounds incredible. Shifts are very quick, especially coming in and out of corners. The balance is exceptional, and that's something that for the G80, BMW's engineers kind of went back to their roots on, trying to get the perfect 50-50 balance. It's not exactly 50 all the way around, but it is close enough that the dynamics, you know, while cornering, while shifting, while accelerating, are very enjoyable, very intuitive. I love the flexibility of having different drive modes right on the steering wheel. So there's a lot of customization with how you can actually tailor the driving experience. Probably unsurprisingly, I have a preset for kind of normal city driving that takes everything down to its softest dynamics, whether that's the acceleration, the shifting, the braking, the suspension. And then the polar opposite of that, with everything dialed all the way up to 11, pushing as much out of the chassis as possible. I really do have very few complaints about the car. Compared to the Mustang, I will say the steering feel on the 2018 Mustang GT, specifically the Performance Pack 2, the second Mustang that I owned, is much better than the BMW M3. And I think that is something that I've seen a lot of people talking about, whether it's on the forums or other reviews. The steering, for it being a $90,000 plus performance car from BMW, is very light. There's not a lot of road feedback. There's not a lot of feel behind the steering itself, which can definitely make the driving a little bit less intuitive than you would want it to be. But the handling makes up for that. And again, I know I'm comparing handling to a Mustang, notoriously not known for its handling, but still a good comparison point, still something to be very aware of.